I want to turn to Congressman Benny Thompson of Mississippi, chair of the Committee on Homeland Security in the House, and Elizabeth Newman, former Assistant Secretary for Threat Prevention and Security Policy in the Department of Homeland Security. And I want to go to you first, Congressman Thompson, because there are a few things that were absurd about what we heard today, at least from the questioners. Let's start with Ron Johnson. The idea that in his mind, the attackers were not supporters of Donald Trump, and if they seemed to be, they were pretending to be supporters of Donald Trump, that they were agents provocateurs, who I assume he probably anticipates were Antifa, which was not there, and that the people who stormed the Capitol were frail, overweight, and had their children with them. I didn't see any of that in the footage that I saw. You are the chair of the Homeland Security Committee in the House. What do you make of Ron Johnson's assessment?
Well, his assessment is absolutely wrong. Joy, everyone saw who broke into the Capitol. The insurrectionists were prepared to do everything possible to harm members of Congress, Capitol Police, everyone. The intelligence that was provided even talked about the persons who were coming. If you look at how they were dressed, everything says they came there to do harm. They didn't come there to observe the counting of the votes. They came there to stop the steal. And so that's what we saw. There's no evidence whatsoever in the files that I have reviewed, my committee has reviewed, that says anything Senator Johnson says is true.
And sir, you're literally suing organizations that were involved, including Donald Trump, that were involved in creating this nightmare for the United States. Along the defendants, the people that you're suing, are you suing any Antifa groups?
Well, they were not involved in it. There's no evidence they were there.
Okay. Are you
So
suing any grandparents and people who had children with them?
No, I'm not suing any Black Lives Matter individuals or anything. I'm looking strictly at the people who showed up on January 6th, broke into the Capitol, put all our lives at risk. The Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and I want former President Trump and Rudy Giuliani, who obviously was his lawyer at the time, who encouraged all this. We have mountains of email, Twitter feeds, encouraging people to come. We now have testimony from people who've been charged who saying we came to Washington because President Trump told us to come. He needed help.
Indeed, Giuliani said trial by combat. He said that on the ellipse. Elizabeth Newman, another thing that was pretty alarming that we heard today was the head of the Capitol Police at the time, Mr. Sun, saying essentially that the Capitol Police did not have the intelligence about the fact that you had armed insurrectionist right-wing groups like the Oath Keepers, like the Proud Boys, who were coming to the Capitol prepared for war. What do you make of the idea that, as he says, they didn't get that intel until yesterday?
It's kind of shocking because any number of people on the outside were raising alarms just based on open source intelligence. There's an open source intelligence group that I follow, and they had raised the alarms multiple days prior to January 6th. So I question that. I'm not suggesting that they were lying under oath, but I don't think that they fully are accurately conveying the problem. It wasn't an intelligence sharing problem. It was not understanding the intelligence that you had. And here's the other thing. I heard them say, like, there was no intelligence that they were going to storm the Capitol or that the attack was going to happen there. I think we've gotten lazy, and we seem to think that intelligence analysts are supposed to predict the future. That's not the role of intelligence. Intelligence is supposed to give you their best assessment, the likelihood of something happening. And even if you're the security professional, your job is threat management, you are always prepared. We've learned the hard way over and over again over prepare. So if you get that threat assessment that there might be a potential for violence, that there are people focused on the Capitol, you over prepare and hope that you don't need it. But they kind of seem to do the opposite, and there's probably a number of reasons why they underestimated the threat that was presented to them. But I don't buy that this is an intelligence failure. I buy that it's a lack of understanding of the threat.
Well, but I want to get to what you just said, Elizabeth, because you served in this in the previous administration. You know, what's sort of unspoken here, including in the Pentagon being so reluctant to deploy the National Guard, is that they didn't want to deploy the National Guard against Trump supporters, that they didn't want to anger Trump and his supporters by sort of festooning the Capitol and the ellipse with security, that they didn't want to have too many cops there because they didn't think that Trump would like the look of it, and they didn't want to make his supporters feel unwelcome. That's what I read. Is that close to what you're feeling is the case?
I think there are multiple factors at play. That is certainly a huge one. Nobody wanted to upset the president. There was rightly a recognition that what happened in Lafayette Square in June of last year was horrid and should never happen again. But we're talking about a different situation. We didn't have threat intelligence that somebody was going to try to do something in Lafayette Square. The overreach was that it was cleared for basically a photo op, and they used military forces and combat approaches to clear peaceful protests. We had indications that there were people in the crowd, not the entire crowd, but there were a group of people that were planning violence. It would be completely appropriate to make sure that you're prepared for that violence. So I feel like there's probably lots of reasons that and lots of bad decisions made along the way, including the very obvious one of unconscious bias. And we need to just be transparent about that. That is a very real thing. When you talk about domestic terrorism, people think it's a bunch of white guys that, you know, get in bar fights and can't get their act together and can't do much harm. And clearly that's not the case. Clearly we have threat actors with malicious intent, and they were coordinated, and they could have caused a lot more harm than what happened on January 6th.
Indeed. We are out of time, but very quickly, I'm going to get in trouble asking one more question. Benny Thompson, Representative Thompson, you've been contacted apparently by Proud Boys who want to talk to you. Can you very quickly tell us what it is that they want to talk to you about as part of this lawsuit?
Well, the comment was, and I directed them to my lawyer, Joy. Basically, I told them, whatever you want to say, you need to talk to my lawyer. They said, no, we want to talk to you. Nope. The lawsuit's filed. You talk to the lawyer, or I'll see you in court.
Wow. Congressman Benny Thompson, Elizabeth Newman, thank you both very much.